From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Hey, do an episode on, well, I mean, if you would like to, I'm not trying to tell you to do it, but do an episode on private intelligence agencies. So, I mean, it's been brought to my attention that there are intelligence agencies now operating in the United States and other nations that are not bound to any state actor. So this is a concern of mine, and I would like to see what you guys can come up with your level of research and, your ability to get deep onto topics, because you guys are really good at that, and you come at it in a very level-headed way. As always, I love the show. It keeps me occupied. Have a good day, man. Take it easy.
Thanks so much, Anonymous. This
Dude,
is
why are
something...
you concerned? Everything's fine. It's cool.
right. This is something that, I think we can all agree, wish more people would talk about out in the open. Private intelligence agencies are a big thing, and they are right at the crux of the ongoing debate over the role of the private versus the public sector. You've heard of private intelligence agencies before. You probably just haven't heard them described as PIAs. So one of the biggest private intelligence agencies, and spoiler alert, folks, one we're going to focus on for at least part of our full episode on this phenomenon, is the Pinkertons. You guys remember the Pinkertons?
Oh, yeah. The Pinkerton Detective Agency.
Wait, that wasn't some kind of government arm?
Well, it wasn't originally. It was a private, it just started as like a detective agency by this guy, Alan Pinkerton. Wasn't that his name?
Mm-hmm. In 1850. Still around today. They are a subsidiary of a security service outfit called Securitas AB. I guess they just...
Whoa.
I guess they just sort of started at the beginning of the alphabet, at the end of the whatever. They had a lot of work to do. They spent most of the time thinking of the first name, Securitas. This is the parent company of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, and they kind of ride a line between a private security detective force and functioning as an intelligence agency. This is kind of like, you know how in the world of physics, when you drill down into smaller and smaller units of measurement, you start to see the rules of reality get a little bit fuzzy. The closer you look at some of these private detective agencies or security agencies, it becomes increasingly difficult to draw a sharp line between them and private intelligence agencies, which take a number of forms, right? If you're a longtime listener of this show, you already know a lot about one PIA, Cambridge Analytica. They're a private intelligence agency. They collect data and then they leverage it for the benefit of their clients.
I forgot that's what they were. My God. You know, I've also heard of something called SIG or SIG, and I've only seen it mentioned a few times in passing in research over the past, couple of years. I didn't realize they were a private intelligence agency as well. It's like, are these things just everywhere? Because I'm thinking about private investigators, right? I'm in my mind, maybe I think I've melded the two concepts together rather than an actual intelligence agency. But this is a whole new thing for me. It's blown my mind.
Yeah, SIG is a Strategic Insight Group.
Okay.
A private intelligence firm. That's the thing is with these outfits, they are not beholden to serve a government, right? The way that intelligence agencies in theory are when they're state powered. I would argue that the private and public sector gets real muddy when you get to things like the CIA. Which corporations do they serve versus governments?
Mm.
Because a lot of them went to the same schools together, right? Anyway, maybe that's a bridge too far, but these intelligence agencies are not all cut from the same cloth either. Some are simply supplying on the ground data to investment firms or corporations, whomever their client may be. Like I used to, I think Matt, I know for sure you, and maybe you as well, Noel. I used to send updates from a private intelligence agency that would send me updates. A place called Stratfor, without the D. And that was primarily, it was just a fascinating geopolitical read. You know what I mean? There's nothing in those newsletters that's like, hey, oil money, put your money here and take it out of here or anything like that. But these companies wield an enormous amount of influence, and a lot of like some of those private military contracting companies we talked about, a lot of them thrive by not being in the spotlight. Like you heard of Cambridge Analytica. Have you heard of the Archimedes Group? Have you heard of Black Cube? I mean, these names are awesome. I mean, this is the big question is, first off, there's nothing wrong with people doing this. There's nothing wrong with, maybe let's say like you are recently retired and you have served as a member of an intelligence apparatus. There's nothing, depending on how you navigate it, right? Caveat, there's nothing inherently illegal about you going and becoming a consultant for one of these places. Or like you retire from the police force and you become a consultant for the Pinkertons. You know what I mean? The part where it gets conspiratorial and weird and sticky and dangerous is when we question how much influence these intelligence agencies have over state level actions, how much influence they may have on what might be considered insider trading. It's weird because this sounds like a very specific niche, right? But it's not. It's huge, man.
Dude, I went to the website for Black Cube, and it says right on the front, I'm just going to read this. A select group of veterans from the Israeli elite intelligence units, is that like Mossad, that specializes in tailored solutions to complex business and litigation challenges. It's like cream of the crop. Now we're for hire. That's so scary to me. Even though I don't know, it's that y'all have nothing to hide. There's no reason you should be worried about this kind of thing. This is for, like you said, Ben, big companies, people who are trying to do litigation, make business decisions. They want to get everything they can on their opponents or, people who someone they might buy or a firm they might acquire. But still, it just, I don't know, feels weird.
And sometimes this can be, relatively passive. Like, again, it runs the gamut of what I would call the INTs, INT, not a Lord of the Rings reference, unfortunately, today.
No, okay.
Those are the tree dudes, right?
Yeah. It's the INTs with an E, oddly enough, are real and run all intelligence agencies. That's why things seem to move so slowly at times. But, the INT, INTs, this refers to let's think of them as the genres of intelligence that can be collected. There's things like human intelligence. I have a live source. Every other, well, you wouldn't do it on a routine. You wouldn't do it on a pattern because you get caught. But let's say like you check a dead drop every day. And if you get the right coded message, then you meet up at a little cafe or tea house in Tehran and you get the scoop on how the government's reacting to Stuxnet or something like that. That's human intelligence. Signals intelligence, collecting electronic communications. Strategic intelligence is kind of an applied version of these things where you synthesize concepts and you analyze this raw data and then you use it as the blueprint or the starting point, the square one for forming policy or even militaristic plans. So this stuff is real, and it's crazy to admit that private companies can do it all the time and do it all the time. But when you think about it, it makes a dangerous kind of sense, because a lot of the people who work in these situations, they may be called consultants, but a lot of them have a little more in common with Liam Neeson and Taken. They've got a very specific set of skills, you know?
Don't take their daughters. Jeez. Or their wives. Or their husbands. Or whoever. Just don't take them.
John Wick style. Don't touch their dogs. You know what I mean? So just as a preview there, I know I've got to cut this short because we're going over time, but this is such an awesome suggestion, Anonymous, and I greatly appreciate it. I would also be interested in hearing from people who have participated in private intelligence agencies, if you are able to speak about it, if you are comfortable doing so. We, of course, we of course will do our level best to keep you anonymous if that is your preference. We 100% have your back. We just think that this is a nest of conspiracies. There's a Matryoshka doll of conspiracies, and it more than deserves a full episode. It might even have to, be like a list episode where we just take 5 or 6 of the big players and then we look at their exploits.
And then we call them all and try and get interviews with all of them, and then we pit them against each other in some kind of Mortal Kombat style private intelligence combat.
There we go. I mean, like right now, well, like any other privatized industry, there are a few big players that overwhelmingly dominate the space because they're dug in. They have the access, they have the resources, they have the scale. They are not wolf whisperers, but let's call them Washington whisperers. They can get things done with a very quick phone call. And when you see how that stuff actually works, when you get close to how the espionage sausage is made here, and I'm not saying it's all skullduggery and spycraft, but when you get close to it, it's scary how easily some of these things can happen.